G'day you mob, welcome to this episode of Aussie English. I am your host Pete, and today I have a special guest for you, Dr. Beau Miles. He was a lecturer at Monash Uni in outdoor education, and he is a filmmaker, adventurer, public speaker, and polyjobist, in that he has many different kinds of jobs. I stumbled upon him recently on YouTube, and he has really fascinating films that he makes about things like kayaking 2,000 kilometers around Africa. He's traveled across Bass Strait by kayak, so from the mainland to Tassie, and he's also run 650 kilometers along the Alps in the southeast of Australia. So anyway, without any further ado, guys, I give you Beau Miles. G'day, Beau. How are you going? Welcome to the Aussie English podcast.
Hello, Pete.
Thanks for coming, man. So I've found you on YouTube. I think for the last probably a year, I've had this kayaking around Africa just smashing me in the face every time I go to my YouTube homepage, and I finally clicked on it and got hooked and went down the rabbit hole of watching a shitload of your videos. I think you must be the most productive dude in Australia. So do you want to tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I get asked those questions a lot, and I try and answer something differently every time because I'm a bit indecisive. You can give us the canned response, it's fine. Yeah, well, I'm a bit indecisive about what I am and what I do. And so I mean, that's the serious side of Beau. In some respects, I'm world-class at nothing. I just do lots of things, and yet I want to be pretty good at lots of things. And I got a YouTube comment a while back saying that, Who is this? Who are you? You know, you seem to be not good at anything, and you just flit around the place doing these sort of bootleg sort of stunts, you know, and there's probably some truth to that. But I would say I'm a teacher, bit of a runner, a bit of a kayaker, and a filmmaker. And I suppose now people call me, my Google profile is YouTuber, which is pretty new to me, and I'm still coming to grips with that, but I don't mind it. You know, maybe I'm a YouTuber. That's where I'm earning my money at the moment. So, yeah.
You're doing a bloody good job. I mean, do you want to talk a bit about how you got started making these incredibly interesting and addictive videos that are now on your YouTube channel, where you've done things like kayak around Africa? I think it was 2,000 miles, was it, or kilometers? It was
only a fair stint. It was a fair stint, and yet it was sort of meek as well, you know. And I'm my own harshest critic, but I wanted to go more than double that. Yeah. And I didn't have the kind of well, Africa had a lot of barriers, but I should have seen a lot of those barriers too. And ultimately too, you know, I kind of ran out a bit of steam, and I'm not one to run out of steam. So it took me a while to get over that. But, I mean, I forget the root of your question, but, how did you start with these sorts of challenges and making these videos, right? Because it has to start somewhere. Yeah, well, another good question. I'm not sure if it was never really a lightning bolt as such. Yeah. And I'm not sure, you know, I'm most of the way through finishing my book at the moment, and I've had to try and tap into why Beau is Beau along the way. And I mean, it's a horrible question to ask yourself in some respects, because it's unanswerable, but it's a nice sort of, like you said before, it's a nice rabbit hole to go down and be indulgent for a while and sort of sort the chaff from something that's got a bit of a glimmer, you know. Well, look, in a very simplistic way, I started filmmaking because I liked the idea of making films. You know, I was kind of a wannabe actor as an 18, 20-year-old. I thought, I like that. I like the idea of being a bit edgy on a stage and being a bit frightened. And that plus my love of the outdoors ended up being an outdoorsman who was a documentary maker. And I've slowly developed into being better in front of screen, I suppose, and being more my authentic self, whatever that might mean. But I do know that I don't look for storylines or plot lines now that I think are going to appeal to people. Yeah. I just look for storylines and plot lines now that are a storyline and a plot line, in a sense, and has this sort of I try and remove myself from it, and then your ego gets pushed aside. It's good.
So do you sort of contemplate the things that you've succeeded at doing, though? I mean, like, you know, you've traveled 2,000 kilometers by kayak around Africa. You've crossed Bass Strait by kayak. You've run 650 kilometers of the Alps down in the southeast of Australia. Like, do you kind of, obviously, when watching the videos, we get to see you going through those moments and appreciating it in there. But what's it like after you've completed those kinds of adventures? Does it sit with you for long, or is it just on to the next thing? Like, does it?
It absolutely sits with me for long. I'm a thinking man's poor man Bear Grylls, in a sense. I pull apart what took place rather than move on very quickly to the next thing. And I think that's important. A Basque Strait crossing, for example, is 15 days of paddling, which is very easy. And I say that with humility. And all my stuff is monkey work. It's just repeat, and you get good enough to want to repeat it, and in some degree a skill set to repeat it. But expeditions are easy. Expeditions are easy because they are 5 things that you do reasonably well in a vacuum in some respects. And yes, you make decisions that have to come at you, and they come at you left and right. But everyday life, going to a crap job 9 to 5, is harder than an expedition in any way, shape or form. And so I don't like using the word privilege much, but, I look back at my 20-year-old self and I never even contemplated the word privilege. And I know now it was pretty good. I just had enough money in my pocket and enough nous to bugger off and go and do things. And the reflective aftermath, going back to that original thing, a 15-day crossing of Bass Strait is 15 days, but it takes you hundreds of days to get to the start line. Yep. And then it took me hundreds of days to make a film out of it. So let's say there's 500 days as opposed to 15 where you're actually not on Bass Strait or not doing the trip itself. So the aftermath and the pre-math is hugely important and is actually where the story exists.
Can you flesh that out a bit? Like, what goes into the crossing of something like Bass Strait, where it's hundreds of kilometers at sea, you're going from island to island, effectively tracing your way just below was Wilson's Promontory, right, where you set off. Yeah. But obviously, you don't just grab a kayak and jump in the water. What goes into setting up an expedition like that?
Well, you don't, but you could. And there's a lot of people that are really they give shitty advice to people that probably could do that. And yeah, we're probably saving ourselves a few rescues every other year. But there is huge potential for people to do that with the information that's out there now. If you do it on reasonably good days, it's a pond out there. When it's not a pond, it can be hardcore. But no kayaker is going to be there on that hardcore day if you've just got a good weather forecasting system in your pocket, Look, I think I'm a reasonably good kayaker at going forward for long distances. I've got a really good body that doesn't injure. I'm just bloody lucky because my technique's not particularly great. Same with running, but I just don't tend to get many injuries, And so, I don't know, the technical stuff bores me senseless after a while because once you know the basics, and in many respects, something like the kayak roll in 17 different ways in 17 different conditions, you only ever do once in a blue moon. Most of the time you're just going forward, So I just want to be good at going forward.
And so what are the different processes like? Do you look forward to the start, the middle, or the end more so than any of the other parts? Or is it all equally enjoyable or equally, horrible?
Well, the philosopher in me says, you can't have one without the other in a sense, The very definition of that word reflexivity, a very academic word, but it sort of tries to debunk cause and effect. You can't have an effect without a cause. It goes both ways, the arrow. It's not cause, effect, next caused effect, and so on and so forth. You never had an effect without a cause in the first place. So you can't have a middle without a start and an end without a middle. And I'm not Beau as a 40-year-old without a 9-year-old experience up a tree or a 12-year-old experience near drowning. I don't know. They all add to the fabric of it, and I'm not sure I can split them apart.
So I was going to ask, how did you end up an academic? Because you seem like a very, and I mean this in a positive way, unacademic academic. My background's in science, and I did a PhD in evolutionary biology and just lost my mind at the end of it in terms of the people had to deal with, the way that everything was very rigid. This is what you do. You don't step out of line. You seem to sort of be the complete opposite of that in terms of the films that we get to see. How is it being an academic at Monash University, but also being such a sort of free spirit?
Well, first, I'm not anymore. They cut the course in November and me with it. So I'm
sorry to hear that.
No, that's all right. I'm currently unemployed and thinking life's okay. Look, I have a great respect for universities, and I loved my job. I genuinely did. particularly the sort of coalface stuff of being a teacher. And I think that says a lot, because I don't think a lot of universities now are about great teaching. They're about okay teaching or good teaching, and their KPIs are based on research, and not even good research, just research.
Yeah.
And I'm becoming more of a skeptic of research at universities. And yet I've got a lot of great friends, and I've spent most of my adult life at a university, so I've got to be careful what I say there. But I haven't been in the game long enough, or I've been in the game long enough to know that it's changed pretty rapidly to this online learning, to research over teaching. Face-to-face stuff is going out the door. And to be honest, you think I'm a bit of a larrikin. I kind of am, and I think a university needs more of that. There's a lot about universities that are full of shit. And that's not just because I got sacked, but because there is so much potential at a university way of thinking, and yet it gets stifled because creativity is not seen as a good thing.
Yeah, they want to keep everything under control, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's super highly political. What isn't, right? But beyond that, because my day-to-day was excellent, and if you do what's required of you, it can be the best job, and it probably is the best job in the world. But yeah, I don't know, mate. I think the creativity thing's just being beaten out of the brightest and the best, to be honest.
I feel you. That was my feeling. At the end of it, I was just like, I could become a podcaster. That was sort of up and coming, and I was like, I get a lot more gratitude or satisfaction out of people improving their lives and situations from the stuff that I can create. Whereas if I'm an academic or a lab jockey, I'm just never going to see the light of day working on my lab tan all day and just, hoping that it helps the world some way. Man, you grew up in where did you grow up? Because there were a few different places that I think you mentioned. Can you tell us about where you grew up to the west of Melbourne, right, and what it was like growing up on a farm in that area?
I'm to the east of Melbourne, yeah. So I'm where the sun comes up for the Melburnians, I suppose. If you're to look where the sun comes up, if you were standing at Flinders Street, I live at the bottom of the sun.
Yeah.
I'm about an hour and a half east of it, in a little West Gippsland community. I live, and I'm sitting now 5 kilometres from where I was born or raised. And as I said before, I'm finishing my book off, which is very much about trying to figure out why I do stuff and trying to be lighthearted about life. Because fundamentally, I think I'm trying to look for sort of windows of lightheartedness, because I've been pretty boring for 10 years, and I'm trying to tap into a funner sense of myself. I used to be really fun, and I turned boring all of a sudden. So I want to get back to it. So, yeah, I'm in this amazing part of the world, mate, that's green rolling hills. It looks like a little England or a Vermont in the US, and it's very pretty. It's very lush. We get good rain. It's green most of the time. It's not as oppressive as a lot of Australia. Although in saying that, the last couple of summers have been killer, particularly early summer. And this fire thing is changing the nature of living in Australia, and I'm not sure I like it all that much.
Were you affected by the fires over the last year's summer?
Yeah, well, beyond all of us being affected by it with the smoke, it was, you got lots of friends all around the state. I wasn't affected last summer directly. The one before that we were right on the front line of it. And then in Black Saturday, yes. So I fought fires for 3 days during that event, and, I saw lots of loss of lots of things. And yeah, I don't like it that's becoming a bit more of a norm, that 100-year storm is happening every 2 years,
Well, and it seems crazy, right? In the news, it just gets sort of swept under the carpet, and we're on to the next thing, right? COVID's taking over, and now we're getting into the Black Lives Matter thing that's coming over, and COVID's no longer in the news. And it seems like we move past these things so quickly and forget about them, right?
Yeah, the powers that be, and I don't want to gang up on media. I think they do a wonderful job in a sense, but they certainly must be licking their lips, having all of these big things come along to be demanding of people's attention every other day. And so there's a great story, right? I'm going to take you on a tangent for a couple of minutes about world news. How we can open up the paper now or scroll the paper now, and it's much the same as it was the day before and the day before that. Something like COVID and a bushfire gives it, I suppose, a sense of dates. But there was a bloke, it was a lighthouse keeper that lived in Alaska, and he used to go into town once a year. And he'd just get the general store owner to keep a year's worth of papers, and he'd come in and get his groceries, his flour and sugar and stuff, and back out he'd go, and he'd read the year before's news every day in chronological order as if it was happening right then and there. And it made no bloody difference to him. And in many respects, that's what news is like now. It is so dateless because it's bad, good, tragic, disgusting, and so, you've got to choose what you read, I suppose, eh?
Yeah, well, it's hard. It seems like it's going extremes both ways, right? That there's never been an easier time now to find horrifying stories to put on the news, wherever, because we're so connected. And it seems like too, with social media, people are responding to outrage a lot more than happiness, right? I think they've done studies on people share things that hit their buttons more so than, you see a kitten photo or something, you're not going to share that. And so it's weird that the media is kind of in a position now where it's relying on clicks for advertising. And as a result, it needs to get as many eyeballs as possible. And you have that bias then of like, well, what are the stories that we can just keep pushing out there to get as many eyeballs as possible?
Yeah, I suppose, I don't know whether we're geared that way, and you'd probably know more about this than me, mate. I remember a friend told me once that, being negative in news is far easier and does get those clicks.
Yeah.
And I'd never thought of it. And that was reasonably, it was quite recent he told me that. And I thought about it. I thought, yep. And I'd written a blog not too long ago where I wrote a blog not to Solomon, but about a pair of Solomon running shoes I had that I'd completely beaten up, but they just kept on going. And I'm talking thousands of kilometres on tough terrain. And I wrote this blog about these cool shoes that I really liked. And if I'd written the blog as the shoes that I thought were the worst shoes I'd ever worn, it would have got read twice as much.
That lasted for thousands of kilometres.
Yeah, that's right.
Why didn't you change them, Beau? Jesus.
I'm going to change the title and people might read it.
I know, well, yeah, it is really difficult, right? That you have the good side and the bad side constantly, I think. But do I want views? Do I want likes? Or do I want to do what's genuine, and just let it be what it is? Do you find that with your stories too, when you're putting together some of these ideas, that you have to kind of try and be like, oh, I have this really fantastical idea, but then be like, oh, that's not really me. That's me wanting to just grow a little bit. Like,
yeah, I tend to, I'm surrounded by really good people now. My wife, she's the perfect vet of any harebrained idea I come up with. And I tell her only 10% of them really. But my business partner now, Mitch, so the guy who makes all the edits, and he's the cut man. So he's becoming one of the key shot makers too. I'll script it and edit it and conceive the storyline and be the front man, but he's shooting a lot more now. And if it doesn't get past him, then I'm kind of dead in the water because I know he's a very good litmus test, and he's more conservative than me. So I've got to come down 5%, and I've got to, in my bargaining with him, bring him up 5%. And I think what you end up with is a pretty palatable story, or at least that's what I'm thinking. And if you trust those key collaborators, that's what makes great bands. They've got strengths between them all.
Can you tell us about the mile an hour video that you did and how that idea came to you and what the experience was like?
Well, like you no doubt the last 6 months of your PhD would have been pretty shitty, in that you're probably, you're sitting in front of a laptop the whole time. Life's pretty intense. You feel quite oppressed. There's lots of good parts about it too, absolutely. I loved it for the most part. But that last 6 months, I put on 8 kilograms. I got my worst injuries of my life because I wasn't doing anything.
Yep.
And I just wanted to be outside doing stuff. And I remember one day I thought, I'm just going to bloody run around the block between a tricky passage of text, And so I also knew that my block was roughly a mile. I didn't know it was bang on, almost to the meter. So I run the mile, I run the block, and I get back, and I've just sweated enough, and I thought, that's pretty good. And I sit down and I bust through that passage of text, and life's pretty good. And I remember thinking, as either then or not long after, I thought, if I did, I don't know, 20 or 30 of those laps, that'd be about a marathon, And when I bust through this PhD and I finally do it, I'm just going to do nothing but potter in the shed. And so I just basically put those two ideas together. I thought, why don't I run this sort of bootleg weird marathon thing around the block and do lots of things in the shed? And it's kind of like the antithesis of writing a PhD. So that's what it came to, yeah.
How did you go? When did it start getting hard? Because it seemed like you went pretty you were pretty chip and chirper at the start, feeling pretty good. And then I think when the night came to and you were getting up every hour, you were pretty unchuffed.
Yeah, look, and it was no worries too. It was kind of, I've done a lot of harder things, but it was, getting up at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning when you're pretty tired and you can't really be asked. You got to be, you got to tell yourself you're doing it for a particular reason. And then, of course, when the sun came up, I was rock and roll. The body just said, ping, it gave me a really great sense of how powerful our circadian rhythm is and how much we're indebted to habits and routine and the sun and just these senses of normality that we wash over us. But it was really excellent. People said, oh, what a stunt. It's totally unsustainable. You would have written yourself off for a week. Yeah, I slept like a log that night for 12 or 13 hours, but I went to work the next day and life just got on. And yes, of course you're not going to do that every day, but it's very much a wake-up call that you can do a lot in a day.
Well, that seems to be a big message from a lot of your films, is that you can do these things. And I mean, you kind of sort of consider yourself an average Joe. You're not going crazy training to do marathons every other weekend, but then you work hard, get into shape, and then attempt these things that are difficult and then show that, hey, this can be done, and if I can do it, anyone can sort of do it. What do you think it is about the average person today and taking on those kinds of feats? Do you think we've been weaned off significant challenges like that?
I don't know, Pete. I'm too caught up in my own world a lot, often, to know what others are like.
Well, that's probably a good aspect, mate.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I need a few people now. I've got very much that sort of. If I've got 3 best mates and Helen and family around me, that's about it. I don't need much more. And maybe that's even getting less and less as life goes on. So I'm getting more and more out of touch with the outside world, particularly now if I'm going to leave academic life and lose that really, really vibrant community of students who I really enjoyed spending time with. They were good fun, But I do know for all of my films that seem like a stunt or hard or skilled, maybe they are, but what drives all of it is that I think my one real key in life and my one strength is that I'm pretty hardy, and I've just got a really good hardy physical disposition, I suppose, but I love using it. I love the fact that I like my heart rate up, which is uncomfortable. If you have your heart rate sitting on 160 or 170 for a couple of hours doing something, it's quite stressful for you and the body, or it can be, but I like it. And there's a bloody lot of people that do. And I just want to use that kind of energy across something that's a bit quirkier rather than just beat myself against a horizon,
Yeah, it seems like it's a good message that it comes out of it. And I don't feel like it's a stunt. I feel more sort of, invigorated. I'm like, oh man, I need to lose a bit of weight. I could just run around the block. Like, that's something that is achievable. I could just go outside and start doing that today. Even if it's just 1 lap and then tomorrow it's 2 or, whatever it is, it feels like it's much more motivating than it is like, this guy's a wanker, just wants the clicks.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's the case. Look, at a mile an hour, I never thought, look, I suppose when people make a one-hit wonder, and I think I've got a lot better films in me, and there will be, I'll have other films that fully doze over a mile an hour. But in saying that, that's being presumptuous that there is such a thing. And I never thought that a mile an hour would be so successful as it is. So I don't really want to make films to be the holy grail of films or to keep one-upping myself in terms of an idea, because ultimately I don't know what those really ideas are that resonate so well with people. I was quite surprised, and it's been copied all over the world now, and there's dozens of other YouTube films doing the same thing, and that's had millions of people watch it and a lot of people inspired, and I'm pretty enamored by that. I think that's cool.
Yeah, definitely. You're definitely leaving your mark. What led to the film that you did, Eating Your Weight in Beans? Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, well, that's do you know what too, Pete? That only just came out, and it's the hardest film I've ever made because I didn't go anywhere, and I was constantly having to justify throughout the storytelling, what is the story here? What is the point of this? Other than, okay, you read a Steinbeck book and you saw this cool scene in it and you thought, oh, why don't I just eat a lot of beans because I like beans? Well, I just told the story in 15 seconds. So how do you make that run into 27 minutes,
And the process of making it was a lot longer than that, right? Because it was...
Oh, dude. Yeah, it was 40 days of just eating beans, but then there's the preamble and then there's the post, and then, so it's sort of a 3 or 4 month shoot for a super simple premise.
Yep.
And unfortunately, or not unfortunately, I think it's an okay film, and it's rolling along pretty well in the audience world, and that's a good litmus test. But I think in many respects, people get caught up in it being a film about food.
Yeah.
And in so many ways it is, but it really could be about me bouncing a basketball 100 times a day, or eating lemons, or, it's about the physical act of changing all of this choice we have, yes, and rolling it into no choice in some respects.
Well, that's what I got. It felt like you'd kind of limited one part of your life where that just, how, what's his name? Zuckerberg wears the same thing every day or something in order to not have to think about what to wear, right? So he has just a wardrobe of the same stuff. It felt like you'd done that where for effectively a month and a half, you were never going to be thinking about what you were going to eat or what food there was, because it was just the next can, right?
Yeah. And look, 2/3 of the experiment was somewhat horrible, because you don't have all of your regular uppers in life, sugary, dopamine or carbohydrate-rich food. And I know that carbohydrates are the main energy in beans. They just don't have many per volume, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people on YouTube saying, dude, beans are 60 or 70% carbohydrate, but that's a bean that's not soaked in a tin. And by volume, I'm still only having 12 or 1,300 calories a day as opposed to double that. And I'm still being busy. So, yeah, I felt pretty rotten for 2/3 of the project, but the other third was an incredible insight, and I love that simplicity of bugger all choice. I'm not particularly a foodie anyway, and life was really simple, and it had some, and I felt, in a sort of sitting there not trying to go for a run, I felt fantastic. You feel clean and light and simplified. It really did feel, it's quite appealing.
What were the effects that it had on you physically and mentally?
Well, I got a battery of tests pre, during, and after, and everything pretty much remained the same, other than the two big spikes, one going one way and one the other. Cholesterol dive bombed, as did B12. So, and there's been a lot of people pick that up and say, yeah, you're going to crash on B12, which is going to make you feel crap, and it's going to mess with your energy systems, and it did.
Have you ever done the keto diet? Have you heard about ketosis?
I have, yes. Well, which essentially this was, in some respects, it was borrowing a fair bit from the keto diet, shocking the system with a low carbohydrate diet in that form. And what I don't think a lot of people understand too is that when you have one form of carbohydrate protein mixed like this, and it's a high fiber food, you crap out a lot of the carbohydrate as well before you can even digest it. And I think keto kind of exploits that. Yeah, look, I don't know a lot about it, and I'm not really a diety kind of dude, but I can imagine what it feels like.
Keto was brutal. I did it for a year, and it blew me away. I couldn't, for the first week, you feel like you're sick because you just have no energy, and you just keep eating fat like butter, oil, the fat off of meat, and it just feels like I'm going to die of a heart attack. And then after the 2 weeks, it's just like, I never think about food and I always have energy, but I can't go all out. I don't have carb energy. I have kind of like snail energy where I can I'll just keep going. But, and I was doing martial arts. I was doing jiu-jitsu, like MMA and jiu-jitsu. And I remember getting on keto, and it was like, I could go hard for about 30 seconds and then I was boned for the rest of it.
Yeah.
It was just crazy. but I couldn't believe it. I was testing my blood, and there's like 0 glucose, and all my friends who were doctors were like, you should be dead. And I'm like, no, it's keto though. I'm running off the fats. But it was an amazing experience. But talk about being difficult to go out with to it'd be like having beans, right? You wouldn't be able to go to many restaurants.
Well, the thing with food, right, it cuts through all demographics because everyone eats. We eat all day, every day, in various ways, at various times, and in various quantities, in a different culture and all that. So, it's sort of marketing 101 to make a film that's sort of, in some respects, based on food, but I never thought about that either, and that's what's been the biggest commentary online, is that this is a very much about food. But I tried to transcend that, because it was more, in some respects, about choice and being lucky, I suppose.
So what do you think of the state of consumerism in the world? Because it seems like a lot of your videos are about reusing things and appreciating things that had a life beforehand, and they can be transformed and have a future life, right? Like you did a junk desk or office video where you effectively remade the office for much less than $13,000. So what do you think of the world and its state of consumerism? Everyone wants the next iPhone from next year, and they just throw the next one out. Like it seems to be pretty crazy, right?
Well, look, I suppose I can answer that as one of two Beaus. One, the serious Beau could be heartbroken by it. You know, it really makes my blood boil, and I could be wild, you know, to the point of wanting to fight someone. It makes me that cross that we're doing this. But then I also know that I'm part of the fabric of consumerism. There's a fair streak of me that's a capitalist.
Yeah.
You know, that I could take other people's junk and sell it for lots of money and then earn lots of money by doing that, you know. And so I know that I'm part of this big wheel of consumerism, but the but is that I want to try and tell stories that exaggerate, I suppose, my flaws within the system. Because yes, ultimately, I think we use too much, and even some of my dearest friends, or friends that I've had a lot to do with for a long time, I see the consumerism go along, and I'm not sure how to approach it, because they're dear to me, and so it's so tough. It's tough.
Are there any big sort of changes that you made in life that you got a disproportionate amount of well-being and happiness out of? My pause of that is that, I'm reasonably tired at the moment. So this is going to be a lackluster interview in some respects, because I've been up since really early trying to write. But if I'm to think of really great bang for buck moments, which I think is what you're asking, and then how do you go in search of more of those moments that really do make you feel like this life thing is incredible? They're pretty momentary. You know, I allude to it in some of my films. I know Africa, for example, that was a hard trip. That was the hardest 5 months I've ever done, because 4.5 months it was just a real grind. You know, I'd chosen something to really enjoy. I thought I would, and I thought the audience would. And I enjoyed it. It was a pretty good day-to-day in some respects, but it was bloody hard. But when I stumbled upon incredible moments during that journey, they're completely untouchable. Great filmmaking, great storytelling. I will never be able to translate what those moments mean to you in some respects, and nor to me. I can't quite articulate it. Whales, a grey whale, for example, breached in front of me. In fact, didn't breach. It just rolled in front of me off the Cape of Africa. It was like the Yorkshire Dales just came and went in a moment, and I had to seriously question whether what I'd actually seen, and yet I know for that 5 or 6 seconds that it was there, it changes your life, because I'm seeing something that's very special and very rare, of this elusive giant animal that's come up from beneath me in this sort of godly way, you know. Do you think most people are missing those sorts of moments? Like, do you think that has a big effect on you, and that in the filmmaking and adventures that you go on, you're kind of searching for those existential moments that kind of raise you up a bit?
Yeah. Look, I imagine that you're super well read, Pete. You're very articulate and you're a good thinker. And I know that you would. That's a good tackling question, right? And immediately my response would be, okay, I've done all these wonderful things, and I'm a doer, and I'm really active and ambitious. And yes, I think people are missing out all over the world if they don't do what I do. But I know that's bullshit too, because and I forget his name, and it's great. I quote him all the time. He's in Alain de Botton's book, The Art of Travel, and he talks about some fella over there who goes and does this 2 or 3 or 5 year. You've probably got it in your bookshelf behind you.
I'm not sure I do, but keep going.
Well, so one guy goes off traveling when he does sort of the grand tour. You know, he goes and travels for 3 or 5 years and just batters himself against Europe. He comes home and never leaves again, ever, because he's had a lifetime worth of experience, and he's bottled up, he's full, and he's completely happy with that. And then for the next 40 years, he just writes, and he has enough in his imagination based on his experience bank to go with it. So for me to keep pushing for experiences might be a bit of a fallacy in some respect too. I've probably got 5 lifetimes worth of think tank, you know, and so others might as well. And they might have a really underwhelming life compared to mine, but they've got moments in there that are perfectly good to extrapolate out over time. So the philosopher in me say, no, anyone can do whatever they like, and it's all a sense of perception.
Yeah, well, I appreciate what you're doing though with the clips and the films that you make, because it does sort of, you know, we get to, it's a very authentic take on difficult tasks, it feels like, you know, and we get to sort of live it with you and appreciate it with you and understand the undertaking. It's not really just polished stuff, you know. We did a 2,000 kilometer trip and fucking crushed it. So easy, bam, you'll never do this. It's much more of a, we ride with you and see the ups and downs, and it's a reality check that you get to kind of enjoy the whole thing. But it feels like in today's day and age, and I keep sort of thinking about this more and more now that I work from home, it feels like it is easy to just settle into this kind of a lifestyle and miss a lot of moments that would potentially be beautiful, that would happen if you don't go out looking for them, right? So yeah, I don't know what my exact point is, but I did at least sort of pull that out of your videos and really appreciate the sort of introspective nature of them.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I get it. I love the I'm not into lineal sort of tellings of things in some respects, that I did this and got up here and we had porridge and off we went and today was crap and yesterday was okay, and yet sometimes you watch an adventure film and the hero of the story is or the protagonist is just pissed all the time that they've, you know, this is hard and I'm injured and I can't believe I'm here, and you think, dude or dudette, you've just made this choice, and now you want me to sit down and watch you grizzle about this choice you've made of using sponsors' dollars and eating special food to go and do this crap. You know, give me something more. You know, give me something that's real and enjoy it, for Christ's sake. And so I really like the ideas that I'm going back, and I'm having genuine fun now when I run an old train line or make weird stuff in the barn. It's fantastic. I have a really cool time, you know, and there's some tough moments, but I encourage it. You know, it's great.
So which, sort of finishing up, which has been the most fun to make? Which one have you learnt the most about yourself or gotten the most out of your films?
I think the most simplistic one, it hasn't seen the light of day yet. There's a small trailer of it on my channel, but it's walking to work, because It is the simplest thing I've ever done. You know, it really was paring back everything I've ever known or learnt, and you know, you have to kind of unlearn things, because you could take 5 things on a walk to work. I walked 90 Ks to work and it took about 30 hours. I did it twice actually, because I did reshoots. So that's going to come out in, I think, September. And so that's been in post-production now. And it was revolutionary in that I could do so much with my body and mind, which I think are the same thing, by the way, in such a simplistic way, in a place that is so bloody distraught, really, and non-wilderness, and yet is still so fascinating and an insight into humanity and me. It was awesome. Yeah,
brilliant. When's that going to be out?
I think around September, mate. It's going to be at the Port Fairy Adventure Film Festival, and its sister film, the Paddle to Work, which took 4 days and was one of the hardest things I've ever done. That's going to be its world premiere in November. So September and November, I'll have 2 commute films out in their full feature format.
Brilliant. And can you tell us about your book and where people can find out more about you then?
You can get pre-sales now if you want a big fat autograph in the front. Just go to any of my things, but particularly my website. So Beau Miles Film. I think it's Beau Miles Film, or just beaumiles.com. You'll find me. And Brio Books, which is an awesome Australian publisher. They've got pre-sales up now, and that's called The Backyard Adventurer, and it's about all my exploits and all my flaws and my amazing wife, and just, it's a good yarn, I think, and it's not finished yet, so it's only getting better.
And you've got an 8-month-old, right? You were telling me. How's that sort of fitted in with life?
Oh, dude, what a reevaluation, hey? It's people always said that it's hard, and I kind of disagree in that it's not. It's just different. It's not. You know, a regular work life can be freaking hard, and if you just take the time out of regular work life and become a dad, God, it's fantastic. You know, I get to get to hinge my day around someone who's more important than me, and that's a revolution, because as a 40-year-old bloke, my ego was running wild, so I needed to come down a bit.
Oh, well, good to hear it, man. And where can people find you on YouTube?
I think it's just Beau Miles on YouTube. Beau Miles YouTube. Yeah, it's got. I think I'm pretty easy to find. The website too will steer you there with a whole bunch of synopses of my films and what's coming up. So yeah, Beau Miles on YouTube, or Beauisms on Insta, and they're both sort of collaborators in what I'm up to and what I'm thinking. And yeah, it's great.
Brilliant. Well, Beau Miles, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, mate. I really appreciated the chat.
Thanks for the chat, Pete.